Hello and welcome to my short presentation on the secret life of immortal data. And specifically today I'm going to talk about the what, how and who of data. A little bit about me and ElastiCloud. So I am the founder and director of ElastiCloud, which is a UK cloud data and analytics consultancy. I'm also a Microsoft Azure MVP and regional director. A lot of my work has been in the OSS space and particularly building data management tools and data tools, of which you can view my GitHub repository and some of the prolific projects as well that I've contributed to online. I'm the author of several courses on data. I run data conferences, and I'm the founder of several groups around cloud, IoT, and data science. So what are we going to cover in this short presentation? We are going to talk about data, what it is, who owns it, and does this ownership help decide anything? Consent, about giving consent for particular data sources, and uncertain future analysis or activities for that data. And whether or not, and the processes that we will need to pick out for repurposing that data. Is consent actually a useful process? Do we give consent for a particular thing? Can we track to see whether or not that analysis has been repurposed? Should we? Should we worry about these things? So let's focus on consent. If we think about data, it changes both in value, secrecy, and confidentiality over time. This, from a technical perspective, is in the form of schemas. And it's sometimes hard to work out what data is. Most companies initially misclassify data, so it's important to understand that data is a living, breathing ecosystem and needs to be continually classified, tracked and catalogued. Classification gets easier when the machine decides what things like PII data are and takes appropriate steps to anonymize data. Although this may not always be good for reporting of data, building dashboards and the like, and also data science workloads, which rely on an understanding of business context. Mistakes in here at this point in time end up rendering data analysis pieces potentially useless, as we can't understand what data is when we anonymize it. Data ownership is a particularly difficult concept to grasp in industry. The more ownership that is attributed between singular individuals and groups of individuals, the longer it takes to grant access. Consent only actually works if rules are followed in any case. This means that appropriate systems to track data lineage need to be in place to ensure that users are doing what they say they are doing with the data that they've been consented to use. Consent tends to be easier if data is anonymized, since in this case problems around being responsible for data and its misuse are lessened. All data owners are scared of data breaches, especially given the up to 4% fines in the UK. This means that many companies will need to invest in rigid security and data management infrastructures to be able to use their own data. In order to understand what consent should be given, the business benefits from analysis should be weighed against the risk of putting personal information in the hands of outsiders who could profit from that in some way. For example, HR data can lead to a great deal of insight for most businesses by working out who will most churn based on behaviours, as well as who will be promoted based on performance. And a lot of these key performance indicators can be tracked through electronic interactions now, through emails, through attendance of virtual conferences, how long you're connected to a VPN into your company network. But at the same time, a lot of this data can be misused when it's in the wrong hands, so we need to be careful. Reporting on this data may be better done if it's anonymized. Data would also need to be tracked, this type of data, meaning that copies should be acknowledged and it should be understood where this data is copied to and in what form. Because you've got key concerns like the right to be forgotten, which is enshrined in GDPR, and that should be front and center of a data strategy. A data strategy should therefore encompass management strategies which enable data to be consented and tracked. As an example, in my primary consultancy, we tend to use data catalogs all the time because we want to ensure provenance, version control, and lineage of data, as well as confirmation on agreement of what the data owner and data consumer agrees to in its usage. Whilst this is not a legal contract, and it's certainly not legally binding, the level of auditability ensures that the correct processes are in place should a breach occur. How we collect data and the rate it's collected at is all important. If we look at this image of train tracks, as somebody doing data acquisition for this, I would think that we would be collecting telemetry from sensors on a train or on a rail track, and we might be using this for predictive maintenance. And it might not be nearly as difficult to manage the process around securing this data and giving consent as it would based on salary or sales data. A stream of numbers and codes without context may not be useful to many people, as the description and context is not carried with the data and usage is already de-identified. Who is doing the analysis? This is a very important question. Sometimes it's not appropriate to de-identify data, so it's mandatory to understand who is processing your data. Background checks such as BPSS or other forms of vetting help build trust between teams that are looking at data. In some companies, basic checks are now mandatory, and other companies may require highly confidential data to have consumers and analysts screened out who don't pass government-level secrecy background checks. It's not always easy to understand what analysis is occurring with your data. The question of ethics is a broad one. The application of machine learning and deep neural nets is not a panacea. AIs are only as good as the input data they process, and much of our data is incomplete and biased. We've already seen bots become racist misogynists in short periods of time on social media, or criminal algorithms inadvertently racial profiling. Care should be taken to understand the input data and assure that AI is explainable. Explainability, especially around neural nets, is not easy, but as frameworks progress, there is more capability built into models which allow biases to be noticed, as would be evident from any overfitting of any input data set. Thank you.